Spawning enemies. Right at the moment in our level, we have three enemies set up. We've got the sheep, which has been done in previous videos, where I've got a rigid body set on it with the Y position frozen. That basically means that it can't actually go up and down, it can only go left and right. And that kind of tied directly into the enemy pursuit code we did in the previous tutorial. So our sheep speed is set as 5. Now, I've taken the tag off it, so it's not actually an enemy at this point. And you might have noticed as well that there is no sheep top anymore on our sheep. For some reason, I couldn't get that to work when I was trying to spawn enemies. So at this point, our sheep will chase after our player, but it won't be able to hurt the player, and the player won't be able to kill the sheep either, or the enemy either. Now, the reason why I'm telling you all this is because when it comes to spawning enemies, you really need to make sure that your enemies are doing everything they should do before you actually kind of do any coding or setup of spawning. So same for my goat then. I've done the rigid body. This time the enemy speed is 6 within enemy pursuit, and the horse is speed 7. Because I always imagined the horse is faster than a sheep and a goat, and I always imagine a goat is faster than a sheep as well. But I'm not really sure actually. I've never really seen them race, but that's a bit of an odd thing to say. Right, and again, these haven't got any tags on them at all. So I just want to get one more enemy up on scene. I'm going to bring a goose up as well. I'm going to add the rigid body to it because I forgot to do this. Let's go back on to physics 2D, and the rigid body is there. And I just need to freeze the Y position. And I'm just then going to drag up the enemy pursuit code where it'll let me do it. Were you going to let me drop red? There we go. And what speed should a goose be? Now they're pretty nippy, aren't they? But in this game, I'm just going to make it size 3 or enemy speed 3. And again, nothing else has been done to it. So the idea is now when I press play, those 4 enemies should run towards me and not be able to kill me, and I won't be able to kill them either, no matter what I try to do. So let's see what happens. So here they come, and they're chasing me left and right. The goose is trying his best to keep up as well. And it kind of gets a bit weird when they catch you because they kind of get to the point of, I don't know what I've got to do now. But anyway, so that kind of works then. But the only thing I really need to do is make sure that all of these guys have the enemy tag, because that's the way they can kill me. And at some stage, I'm going to have to work out what I need to do in order to kill them. Maybe I can shoot them with eggs or something like that. Right. Now, the reason why I've done all the setup beforehand is because basically I now need to make each of these enemies into prefabs. Now, a prefab is something which gets called up by code onto the level, onto the scene then. And the idea is, over on the left-hand side, I'll go from left to right as we look at them. My sheep, if I drag it down into the assets, it turns blue up here, and then you get this little blue kind of shape appearing here, and eventually there'll be a picture of a sheep appearing in there. And if you click on the little arrow, it kind of shows you what the prefab's about. It looks a little bit scary, this sort of part, so I'm actually going to go back to scenes, back to this point here. But once I've made a prefab, I can then get rid of it over on the left-hand side. I'll do the same for our goose, get rid of it. Same for our horse. And as you can see, look, they actually start to appear as like minimized versions of those, so you can see what they're referring to. And then lastly, I'm going to do it for our goat as well. And I'm going to get rid of it there. Right, okay, so now I've got my prefab set up. I need to kind of tell Unity where I want these enemies to spawn from. So I need to add an empty object, which I'm going to call spawner. And it's difficult to see it because it's an empty object. So what I'm actually going to do is click over on here on the left, on the right hand side, I should say, and I'm going to click on this red dot. And as you can see, look, it appears there. And it's actually not where I want it to be, so I just want to move it up a little bit so it's in that position there. Okay, right, and with this spawner, this is where our enemies are going to spawn from. I'm going to need to add a bit of code to this called EnemySpawner. And enter twice. I'll double click on it down here and let us do it. It's going to do its little hold thing, isn't it? It always does a little hold thing. Right, okay, so there it is. There's our code, and we're actually going to copy and paste something over the top of this. Well, I am, and you guys are going to have to type, and I'll try to explain it as best as I can as we go along. So back on here, highlight all those guys and paste it in. Now, in lots of my older videos, I've been saying to you, I don't know why these things get deleted. Oh, actually, let me just press save a second and click on that so we can do that while we're chatting. Yeah, on our, and I never really realized what those top two lines of code are, but now I know. This part here where it says private IE enumerator, this is basically making like a delay happen. So for every 1 second, this spawn rate, that's what the 1F refers to at the top there, every 1 second, a enemy will spawn. And anytime you're using an IE enumerator, so a delay of some sort, so it might be a delay of when your character dies and then respawns somewhere, or a delay between something appearing and disappearing on your screen. These are the libraries which are needed for this to work. But anyway, the idea of this is, like I said, the spawn rate is 1F or 1 second, so I can change that to make it higher or lower. We've got a serialized field, so we can actually do it within Unity ourselves. This game object is basically what is going to be our spawned enemy, and at this stage, I'm only going to spawn one of the enemies we've got set up. And basically that's what that code does. So now if I come back onto here and I click back on our spawner, you can see the spawn rate is there, so I can change that. The lower the number, so I can go down to like 0.0001 is the how frequent the enemies will spawn, and they'll spawn really quick at that point. And if you wanted to do them so there's a lot more kind of delay between them, you just increase that number up as high as you want to. So the enemy prefab, where it says none, I can either click on the dot or I can just drag across the prefab I want to bring in. I'm going to drop it into that position there. And I've just spotted something, and I know this has caused me problems. If I press play now, it should work. So my sheep will come bouncing out of this dot I've got set up. And it does work, but the problem will be when it runs, and I've got a feeling it's not going to be a problem now I said that, they are actually spawning, look, over on the left-hand side. And if I click on them, you can see they are actually making their way across to me, but we can't actually see them. Now, the reason why, I don't know why it's done this on mine, my spawner, it's actually got a Z position of -10. So if I change that to 0, I press play again, and I hope it doesn't do that on yours, but that was really frustrating me earlier. I was thinking, what the hell's going on? I don't understand why they're not appearing on the screen. But this time, every 1 second, a sheep appears and it comes towards me. And remember, because they've actually got that code set up on them, and I don't know why they're not killing me actually. Maybe I'll have to have a look at that again. I'm not quite sure why they're not killing me, but you get the idea. They spawn like this. Now, at the moment, I can't remember what it is I need to change about these, but they are facing the right way as well. All that's kind of happening good. I'll pause that part. And the next bit of code, enemy prefabs. Oh, right. So this is kind of how I get different enemies appearing. So it looks a bit odd, I know, but I've just got a couple of little things I need to add. Because remember, we did kind of set up 4 prefabs, didn't we? And I haven't tested this yet, so this will be the first time I do it. So I need to add this onto here and get rid of enemy prefab. I've basically added an S to the end of it and put in this little part in here as well. And back on our document, we need to also take these 2 lines. So these will go after the yield return weight bit. I'm only saying that for myself more than anything. So they're going to go there, and then I think in our very last line I just need to change that bit to enemy to spawn. Why don't you highlight, thank you. So I've copied that back across here, and I think it's just that line there I need to change. Now I don't need to get rid of the space, but I will because it's going to bug me otherwise. So I'm going to save that, go back onto Unity, and this should change now over on the right hand side. So basically what we've done, we set up an array, and that's what those square brackets were basically at. Oh, it's not going to let me do it now, is it? Yeah, it is. The square brackets there saying we're going to have an array of different enemies, and we are now going to tell Unity what enemies we're going to use. So where we've got now this list is empty, and if you haven't got it dropped down, then make sure it does get dropped down. If I click plus, and my first one is going to be the sheep. If I click plus again, and then I'm going to chuck my goose in there. Now it doesn't matter what order I do these in. I'm also going to have my goat. If I click on plus, my last one is going to be my horse. So when I press play this time, I should be attacked by a pile of different enemies. That's what should be happening. So there's the sheep, another sheep. Oh no. Oh, goat. Great. It is working then. So two goats, horse, sheep, another horse. There is a goose in there somewhere. I can see a goose over there. Ah, there he is. I can see him in the background. So you can see that's how you get enemies to spawn. Now, the only thing I want to fix on this really is because they kind of spawn in out of nowhere. So you might want to put like a doorway or something like that. And the easiest way to do this is just to add a 2D object. I'm going to add a capsule, which I'm going to change to the color black. I know that 6Fs or 6F, 6 zeros. And if I just double click so I can zoom in on it a little bit. Now that's far way too small at the moment. So I'm going to drag it so it is much bigger. Can't actually see how big it is now, but if I play, at least you get the idea when this actually happens. It might be too big, it might be too small, but instead of them randomly appearing out of nowhere, they actually randomly appear out of a doorway. So we need to be a little bit taller looking at it. Okay, so that's how you do spawn in. So you could potentially do this. So you're spawning from several different areas. So if I go back to this point, zoom back out to the main camera, and I'll move my player so it is more like in this place. And I'm just going to copy the, no, not the capsule, the spawner. I'm going to press Control and D. So I've got two spawners, and I'm going to move the other one so it is actually behind us in that position. And I think, look, it's got exactly the same setting. So now when I press play, I'm going to get attacked from two different sides. Now, this spawning kind of thing, it might not really work out if you want a 2D scroller like this, but if you were doing like a top-down game of some sort, then you end up kind of having loads of different enemies attacking left, right, and center, which could be a pretty cool game. So that's how you do it, basically.